Hello, everyone, and welcome to Corn Ferry Live. No matter where you are in your career, just starting out, well seasoned, or somewhere in between, we're thrilled to have you with us today. As always, our goal is to dive into topics that really matter, whether it's a hot button issue making headlines or a challenge you're tackling right now. We aim to bring insight, clarity, and maybe even a few aha moments. So, what's our topic for today? I hear you cry. Well, we'll be discussing the world's most admired companies of 2025. We're going to be exploring the organizations with the strongest reputations, what sets them apart, and why they continue to lead. Have you ever looked at the world's most admired companies and thought, what's their secret sauce? Well, today we're not just peeling back the curtain, we're diving headfirst into what makes these businesses the gold standard. And spoiler alert, it's more than celebrity endorsements and a Super Bowl ad. Come on, you Eagles! These fresh off the press rankings were just released this Wednesday, so stay tuned. We'll be sharing insights and links in the chat throughout the session. And remember, this is a two-way thing. I expect you all to get involved. I'm looking for responses in the chat, signs of life. And please, 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 put our guests to the test. Get those questions in early. Here's one for you right now, just to get you started and warmed up. Which industry do you think will appear the most on our list today? Put it in the chat right now. Yep, now. It's really simple. Click in, put what industry. There you go. And one more for you. What do you admire most about your own company? I'll take one-word answers if that's all you'll give me. Okay, let's get on with the show. As always, I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer here at Korn Ferry. And today I'm joined by Tamara Rodman, Senior Client Partner of our Culture Change and Communication Practice, and Mark Royal, Senior Client Partner with Korn Ferry Digital. Tamara is a communications strategist and executive coach. She's spearheaded change management and communications for numerous high-profile transformations. And Mark, well, he's an employee engagement specialist. He plays a leading role in directing Korn Ferry's annual research with Fortune magazine to determine the world's most admired companies. And he's been doing it for over 25 years. Welcome, Tamara and Mark.
Thank you, Darren. Looking forward to it.
Hello, nice to see you both. Nice to see you both. Hope you're doing well. Okay, we're going to get straight down to business because I know our viewers are really keen to find out some of the things we're going to be telling them today. So, Mark, let's start with you. With so many of these top 10 and best of lists, they're out there sort of thing. What makes this one different? Why should we actually care?
Well, we'll be talking in a moment about what makes it different in terms of processes and approach, but just what makes it different in terms of why we should care. I'd say three things. First, longevity. I mean, this study has been running since the mid-1980s. It was taken global in 1997 by Korn Ferry, partnership with Fortune. But I think the long-running status of the world's most admired companies lists attest to the interest that it garners from companies and executives within. And I think with good reason. Reputation is, as we see it, a key corporate asset. And as such, drives real outcomes for organizations. It influences attraction and retention of talent as candidates consider the employers they'd like to work for. It influences investor behavior. It influences customer choices. And certainly we've seen over the years as we've tracked performance of the world's most admired companies against market benchmarks, they're not only highly regarded, they're also highly successful. So a lot of reasons why we should pay attention to what identifies these companies and what separates them apart.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Tamara, why does a strong corporate reputation really matter?
Yeah, well, so as Mark was saying, reputation matters to virtually everyone who matters to a company's business. And, like you were saying, Mark, a strong ranking can make a company more attractive to potential investors, partners, top talent, even your existing employees. If you think about it, even from a marketing perspective, reputation, even at a corporate perspective, can boost your brand value, brand awareness, potentially lead to increased customer loyalty, market share. But beyond all of those very tangible benefits too, rankings like this also give you a bit of a benchmark that companies can use to measure themselves against their industry peers who presumably know them better than most to really identify what makes us competitive, where are some of our opportunity areas. And, the other thing I'd say too is a strong reputation has protective benefit and it can act as a buffer if you have a time crisis. It kind of creates this foundation of goodwill to help mitigate any impact of negative events. I think of building reputation as putting deposits into a bank account over time. You build goodwill through your strategic choices, your performance, reputation, and then if there's a crisis, you're able to make a withdrawal, if you will, from your reputational bank without maybe going bankrupt.
Oh, I love that. I love that analogy. I love an analogy. Now, usually my audience is very unreceptive and I have to drag it out of them, but they've been brilliant so far. So the industry question, tech seems to be the most common from the team there. So we'll have to hold on to that and see if we get some of those kind of answers. And what they admire about their organizations, well, it's agility and collaboration seem to be the ones coming up as well. So thank you very much. Keep getting them in, and don't forget the questions for our guests. Mark, maybe you could explain to our viewers how you score and rank these as well. I think that'd be interesting for everyone to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the title suggests, Most Admired Companies, this is a study that's all about corporate reputation. We set out with Fortune to identify the companies overall and within different industry groupings that are held in the highest regard. So let's start with the participating companies. The eligible companies are determined by Fortune and drawn from the Fortune 1000 and Global 500 lists. So they are effectively the largest players in their industry categories by revenue. So those are the eligible companies. There are about 650 eligible for the 2025 rankings. And in terms of headquarters, they represent a global group, definitely, with 29 different countries represented in that group of 650 companies. So who are the raters? Who provides feedback? Well, the raters providing the feedback are drawn from the eligible companies. We invite up to 10 senior executives and up to 7 board members from each eligible company to provide feedback as part of the process. And that's important when thinking about the rankings, because it makes the Most Admired Companies rankings a peer review, if you like, of corporate reputation within the business community. It's not, notably, a public opinion poll. It's not the view of end consumers of these companies' products and services. It's very much what the business community feels about these leading organizations. And so what are the raters asked to do, and what's generated? Well, the raters are asked to provide 2 types of feedback that generate 2 sets of rankings as part of the Most Admired Companies research. First, we ask the executives and directors participating to identify the companies they most admire across industries. And that drives, as an output, the cross-industry all-star list, the top 50 list. That's typically a headline when the rankings are published, as they were yesterday. And we'll be diving into that top 50 list a good bit today. The second thing we ask raters to do is turn their focus to their industry categories. So evaluate the 10, 15 companies within your industry space on a more detailed set of attributes of reputation. And those attributes or components of reputation cover a wide range, from people-related measures or factors like quality of management, ability to attract and retain talent, product and service measures, quality of products and services, innovativeness, some financially related components of reputation, financial soundness, wise use of corporate assets, long-term investment value. It also included our perceptions related to social responsibility and effectiveness in doing business globally. And to determine the industry rankings, we average across the feedback that's provided in each of those areas to derive an overall score that positions a company in the industry rankings. And for the purposes of the Most Admired Companies study, industry most admired companies are those that score in the top half of their industry groupings in terms of reputation. So there really are 2 sets of winners, if you will. The top 50 global all-stars, drawing on feedback from across the full rater pool, as raters are asked to identify which companies they most admire across industries, and then detailed industry feedback coming only from executives and directors working in a particular industry and focused on companies in that industry.
Brilliant, brilliant. And the big question I think everyone's waiting for: who made the list?
Yeah, well, let's focus at the top of the list.
I was going to say, not the whole list. We haven't got.
Yeah, so we'll focus at the top of the top 50 list. Drum roll, please, for perhaps no surprise, if some have been paying attention to the Most Admired Companies list in recent years, Apple is again the world's most admired company. The top of that top 50 all-star list. That's for the 18th straight year, an incredible track record.
Wow.
And for the 6th year in a row, Amazon and Microsoft round out the top 3. And going back to your industry question, Darren, what do people think in terms of industries that may dominate? We had a lot of people weigh in and suggest tech, and they may have taken a peek at the results or just have good instincts, because that's definitely true. Fortune made the observation last year that big tech companies were once disruptors at the edges of the global economy. Now they're the engines at its center. And we see that reflected in the top of the most admired companies list. 5 of the top 10, in fact, are tech-focused companies. We've already mentioned Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. NVIDIA comes in at number 4. It's also included in the top 5. And Alphabet comes in at number 9. Also represented at the top of the most admired company list, in the top 10, that top 50 list, are 2 notable retailers. Walmart returned to the top 10 last year for what was the first time in 14 years, and is again in the top 10, now number 8. And they are joined by Costco at number 6. And then rounding out the top 10 are several financial giants, from Berkshire Hathaway at number 5, JP Morgan Chase at number 7, and American Express at number 10.
Okay. I guess there are a number of them we're not surprised by, as you've said already. But if we look at the top 50, Tamara, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of the mainstays? I mean, who's making the list year after year?
Yeah, so I think, as Mark was talking about the top 10, it's interesting that those are the exact same top 10 as last year, right? Some movement within those, but very consistent. And if you look more broadly at the top 50, many of these companies have very intentionally built their reputation around innovation, and innovation not necessarily just for its own sake, but to respond to changing market conditions, changing customer needs, for example. And I think really germane this year is that they've also demonstrated a certain adaptability that ends up being reflected in continued strong performance, despite all of this prolonged uncertainty we've been going through. So think of them as sort of anchors in a sea of uncertainty in terms of being able to respond and still perform. And, if you also, another interesting point we noticed, if you look at the top 50, you'll see a lot of companies with long tenured CEOs, meaning they've been in the top seat for quite some time. And this is notable because, the past couple of years, we've seen record CEO turnover. So, it was interesting to us that maybe having seasoned yet adaptable leaders in place may be contributing to strong reputation.
Brilliant. And I believe we have got a question from one of our viewers who pop up on the screen, from Zach here. What do you think are the biggest challenges for companies to maintain their admired status? Thank you, Zach. Who wants to take that one on?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Mark, please jump in.
Go for it.
So I think, there's it's really there's always about talking about your story and sharing that, and that's one thing that's very important, right? Being able to express what your values are, and then what is the value that you actually bring to the broader world. I think it's another to make sure that you're actually living that, right? In terms of the actions and decisions you make strategically, your performance over time, so on and so forth. And as I was saying with my bank analogy earlier, reputation's fragile, and it can be changed in an instant and can have sort of irreparable damage. And if you have a sudden headcount reduction that's handled very poorly, that can have a sort of leave a lasting scar on your reputation. So I think it's making sure that the decisions you're making as a leadership team and as a company really are thoughtful and sort of thinking about what does this mean for a reputation broadly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. 2 additional thoughts. We've seen over time that reputation and performance do tend to come into alignment. When it comes to reputation, success is hard to hide. So is lack of success. So I think that the kind of adaptability and agility that most admired companies have shown in adapting to disruptions and changing conditions is key to the formula for success, but a challenge, no doubt, in maintaining most admired status. And then I would just echo what Tamara said. I think in the current environment where there are a lot of tools that can amplify voices very quickly, reputation is really constantly at risk. And as a result, it needs to be very carefully managed, as many most admired companies do.
Okay, great. Just another quick question for our viewers, keep them warm. I'd just be really interested, because we've been talking about the top list here and stuff. And if you can just put a simple yes or no in the chat. Is your company currently in, or even ever been in, the top 50? I'd be really interested to know, what the answer to that is from our lovely, wonderful viewers. So pop that in the chat if you can. Mark, you've worked on this project for a number of years, maybe more than you'd like to say. Were there any surprises, and who made sort of like the biggest jumps from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about some of the stability in the most admired companies list, but there is definitely a good bit of change and dynamism in the list as well. We had NVIDIA, as we've talked about, cracking the top 10 last year and now moving up into the top 5. They've been joined in the top 50 list by a new entrant in the same industry space, Taiwan Semiconductor, cracking the top 50 in 2025. Other new entrants this year, Caterpillar coming in at number 40, ServiceNow at number 42, and Novo Nordisk at 46. So 4 new companies joining the list. And if we focus on companies that were present in the list in 2024 but have made big moves, some of the notable moves would be Eli Lilly jumping up 13 places within the list, Goldman Sachs moving up 12, Public Supermarkets moving up 10, or Netflix moving up 8 places in the top 50 list. And as we talked about, there are 2 sets of rankings. There's the top 50 list and the industry rankings. And we produce industry rankings in 2025 for over 50 industries. And 16 of the 51 industry groupings for which rankings were released have new number 1s in 2025. So we're also seeing a good bit of change and turnover in the industry lists. And that'll be something our audience will want to check out in the rankings as well.
And Tamara, were there any real clear reasons for those changes? They do something different this time round, or was it just by chance? And was there a scoring category that had, I don't know, the biggest impact? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So I'm gonna. I love Mark's quote around success is hard to hide. So I think the financial performance is a huge consideration, right? And often when we see major shifts happening, it's because companies have successfully seized what is a timely market opportunity and been able to achieve strong performance because of it as an outcome. So some of the examples that Mark gave, for example, NVIDIA and Taiwan Semiconductor, right? Think about the global chip shortage, being able to jump in there. And then kind of on a similar vein, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, think about the boom that's been happening with weight loss drugs. So I think it's something around the intersection of being adaptable, being able to look at the market trends and perform just at the right place and the right time.
Great. I think we have another question from one of our viewers. What can companies not on the list learn from these results?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is a select group of companies that are eligible to participate. There are 650 of the largest companies that are eligible for the most admired companies ranking, which means there are many prominent companies exhibiting distinctive practices that don't factor into the rankings. I think there are a number of takeaways that can be gained from this type of list. I think even organizations that are not among the eligible companies can look to some of the trends and dynamics overall in the top 50 list or within particular industry settings to take away conclusions that could be helpful as we focus on companies in our industry space that are perceived across the different attributes of reputation to be particularly innovative, particularly effective in delivering quality services and solutions, particularly effective in operating their businesses globally. The identification of those companies through the most admired companies rankings may encourage some inquiries related to some of the best practices of these companies that have contributed to their reputation and status in those areas that other companies can take away. The other thing I'll highlight is, though it's not a focus of today's discussion where we're centering on the rankings, we at Korn Ferry do research coupled with the most admired companies rankings every year to get behind the rankings and understand what separates the best from the rest in terms of practices and approaches. That's also a great source of information that's derived from the most admired companies list, but applicable to companies of all sizes, public, private, large, small. Some of the best practices that most admired companies exhibit that we've found to contribute to their reputation and success provide great takeaways for organizations. So certainly if people would like to know more about our research with the most admired companies over the years, we have those insights packaged in a variety of ways, and we'll be releasing fresh research off the 2025 rankings in the coming weeks.
Oh, I love that. I love a side plug there, Mark. Well done. I think we've got another question as well. I don't know if Tamara, you want to see if you can take this one from Sean. Does experience working for a WMA company impact the way you value talent in executive search activities?
Oh, interesting question. So I think, the hypothesis I would put forward is, you know, one would think, and I think this holds true, right, that attracting talent, which is one of the dimensions that we measure, right, of corporate reputation here, it obviously has a knock-on effect, right, to help when you're looking to recruit folks. Think about being able to say to people, if you're a leader or employee at a company, I work for one of the world's most admired companies. There's a lot of cut that comes with that. So I think it definitely can be an accelerant and make a positive difference. Mark, what would you add?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are often drawn to most admired companies because of the feeling that having spent some time in a most admired company will be beneficial for them. These are typically successful companies that offer people opportunities. They've been very focused on growth and development of talent over time, and I think the stop in a most admired company is a nice addition to anyone's resume. So yeah, I definitely think there's a connection. We've seen in our research recently related to organizational culture and the focus of most admired companies that most admired companies as a group have learning and development as a top cultural priority for the future. And I think it highlights the emphasis they place on developing talent for the longer term. And we've seen that come through in our research in many different ways.
Sure. Thank you, Sean, for that. And I think we've got time for one more question. I think. Let's see if it comes up on the screen. Oh, thank goodness for that, from Santiago. What common attributes do the top 5 companies share that position them among the most admired?
Well, I'll take one pass at that. And Tamara, I think you may be able to return to some of the thoughts you shared to provide additional insights. But I think if we ask most admired company participants, executives and directors who participate in the rankings over time, what are the factors that most drive corporate reputation? Thinking across the different attributes we measure, what do they view as most critical? Typically, the answer is quality of management and quality of products and services. Now, you might say, well, that's a little self-serving. You're asking executives what matters for reputation. They're saying, well, it's us, right? Top management. But I think actually, less cynically, it's a forward-looking and helpful perspective. If you want to know where a company is right now, you can look to its financials. If you want to know where it's going to be 2, 5, 10 years from now, look to the quality of the products and services it delivers, the quality of the people delivering those services. And I think that's where most admired companies have put their emphasis. And there's a heavy focus on leadership and people development, as well as innovation and service delivery in most admired companies that I think has, as a group, consistently set them apart. So that's an answer, and it draws directly on what most admired company executives and directors tend to tell us about what they think matters most for corporate reputation. But Tamara, you may have additional thoughts.
I think that was great. Thanks, Mark.
So as always, we've run out of time, but this is our Jerry Springer moment, our final thought for the day. So I want you to think hard and give our viewers something they can really put into action. So what area or areas do you feel our leaders have to be focusing on right now? Who wants to kick off?
Sure. I'll add something I said sort of earlier, but be really mindful of reputation and think about reputational impact when you're making major decisions, operational, people, or otherwise. Have that be one of the criteria that you consider. What does this mean for our multiple constituencies? What could this imply for our reputation? It's like clay. It can definitely shift and be changed over time.
And I would just add, in terms of responsibility, most admired companies have told us and shown over the years that they don't limit responsibility for corporate reputation to a particular functional group, marketing, investor relations, corporate communications. It's really seen as something, because it's an important corporate asset, that's everyone's responsibility. Senior executives, employees, board members, taking accountability for reputation. And I think that mindset is important, especially as we've discussed in an environment where reputation is at risk and can go wrong in a lot of ways for organizations. So I think that sense of collective ownership and responsibility is important to carry away as well.
That's brilliant. I can see we've got a few more questions, but we're not going to have time, I'm afraid. But we will try and answer those questions after the show. So we'll try and get to as many as we can. So just like to say thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Another great session as always. And thank you both, and hope to see you again soon. Take care. And thanks to all of you out there for joining us and for all your questions and responses. I think I'll give you an 8 out of 10 today. I thought you did pretty well, so thank you for that. And don't forget to check out the chat for the link to the world's most admired companies. And hey, if you want to keep the good vibes going, visit us at cornferry.com. We've just taken a wild ride through the land of the world's most admired companies. From innovation to inspiration, these companies are basically the rock stars of the business world. But now I want you to go forth. Be awesome. Remember, you're the next company everyone will admire. Mic drop. Goodbye.